So we started Perek Chav Aleph last time, and we started in the shir. We mentioned when the Mesilas Yesharim mentioned his staklus and his beinanus, we kind of went back to the Mishkal HaChasidus and talked about the fact that you have to be thoughtful and you have to see the whole picture. But then the Mesilas Yesharim explained that the histaklus and hisbaininus that he's referring to in the beginning of this perek is a positive histaklus and hisbaininus. Histaklus means viewing the situation. Hisbaininus means being thoughtful about it. And that it's talking about our sense of our relationship with Hashem. This is a really, really important thing because we live in a world that's very polarized. The world outside is polarized, the world inside is polarized, okay? So you have some people that are very, very, very Yiras Shamayim focused, very strict, very serious Yiras Shamayim focused. And then you have people that are very I love you Hashem focused, very geschmack and enjoyable and the thrill of Yiddishkeit and the song of Yiddishkeit and all of that. And we look at it as two separate hashkafas. We think you have the intense world and you have the sing and dance world. Right? That's what we think. But it's a mistake. And it's a fatal mistake. Because neither way is Avodas Hashem. Avodas Hashem is the way the Mesilas Yesharim describes. When a person recognizes HaKadosh Baruch Hu's tremendous greatness and awe, and a person is overwhelmed from the greatness and the power of Hashem, and then his reaction to that is to feel loved by Hashem. The reaction to that is not to feel like, oh no, I'm full of anxiety, I'm going to curl up into a fetal position and try to survive my life. The reaction to that is to sense HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so powerful, he's so great, and he chose me, and he loves me, and he cares for me. Do you see how the two Mahalachim blend together? And that's what the Mesilas Yesharim describes here. He says, when a person thinks about the greatness of Hashem, the incredible distance between us and Hashem in Madrega, it's not calculable. And then he thinks about how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us, and how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu draws us close to him, and how good HaKadosh Baruch Hu was to us, that he gave us the Torah. So he says when that happens, Vadai shetislahet boy, ava aza, it's certain that a strong love will be like flickering inside of him, will start like pumping inside of him. The Yivchar, and he'll choose. The Yis'ava, and he will desire lidavek by, to attach himself to Hashem. So we're up to the first Vihine on page Kuf Yud Gimel. So this is where we take this idea further. Says the Ramchal, Vihine, Lozeh tzarech ha'adam sheyisbayded b'chadarav. For a person to be able to get this, for a person to be able to absorb this, he needs to be misbayded. He needs to be able to spend time alone in his rooms, meaning to not always be interacting with people. For us, it's very, very, very difficult to do that because we take our phones with us into our rooms. We're almost never completely alone to just think. But the Mesilas Yesharim strongly advises us to have time to think in our life. V'yikbaitz kol mada'oi usvunasoi, and he should gather all of his intelligence and all of his knowledge about Hashem el hahistaklus ve'el ha'iyun b'dvarim ha'amitiyim ha'ela, to looking at and examining these true facts. V'hinei vadai, and it's certain sheya'azreu lazeh roi v'hasmada v'ha'iyun. Listen to this advice from the Ramchal. It would be very beneficial, the Ramchal advises us, if we would be masmidim, roi v'hasmada, which means we would learn with consistency and and learn carefully with iyun. B'mizmayrei David Olav Hashalom. To learn the Mizmayrim of David HaMelech. This is very interesting that the Ramchal advises that we have a Seder learning Tehillim. Not to murmur Tehillim and we're not thinking about it and we're just swallowing up prakim of Tehillim. Not that. But rather to spend time learning what David HaMelech in Tehillim. I have a Messiah that David HaMelech included in Sefer Tehillim every emotion known to man. Tehillim is full. You know there are 5 Sfarim in Tehillim. Tehillim has 5 parts. The Rav Shamshon Hirsch writes that just like the Torah has 5 Chumashim, Tehillim has 5 parts. If Torah is the Seichel of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tehillim is the Leiv. If Torah is the intellect and the responsibility, Tehillim is the yearning and the wanting and the love and the connection. So the Ramchal strongly advises that we spend time examining the songs of David HaMelech, that we sing along with him, that we understand them. That and being thoughtful about them, and what they're saying and what their inyan is. What's so special about Tehillim? This is rare that you find a little bit of a book review on Tehillim. Says the Ramchal, Ki kulam maleim ava v'yira, because all of the mizmayrim of Tehillim are filled with the love and awe from Hashem. V'chol minei chasidus, and all kinds of chasidus. You see David HaMelech's yearning to be close to Hashem. Hinei b'hisbaina noibam, when a person is thoughtful about the words of Tehillim, lo yimana, he will not be able to restrain himself. May his oyer by his oyerus gadol, from awakening within himself, a tremendous awakening. His oyerus gadol, a great awakening. Lotzeis be'ikvaisov, to go out in his footsteps, to follow in the footsteps of David HaMelech, v'laleches b'drachav, and to go in his ways. Okay, so this is something. No, this is good advice. You want to be a chassid, learn Tehillim. Don't read Tehillim. That has other milas, but that's not what he's saying. You want to be a chassid, learn Tehillim in a way that you understand it, with a translation, with an understanding of what David HaMelech is saying. And then he says another thing. V'chein toil. You know what else would help? Hakriya b'sipur ma'aseh hachsidim. Reading stories about the actions of Hasidim. Telling stories. Ba'agadais asher bo'sham, and the different divrei agada that exist about the stories of tzaddikim. Ki kol eila ma'oyrim es ha'seichel. All of these things inspire a person's seichel, lehisya'et, to take the eitzah, to learn from the tzaddikim, v'la'asais kema'aseyam ha'nechmadim, and to do like their precious actions, v'zem mevuar. Now I have to say that in our generation, we have not necessarily measured up to the full potential of hearing stories about tzaddikim, because we've turned it into an industry. And we've created a sense among people that the tzaddikim were perfect, and that and Avodas Hashem is to be perfect. And that's a big problem. And it's a little bit of a challenge, because you can't really expect that people will write stories about tzaddikim and say, yeah, but they weren't perfect. Right? Certainly our respect for tzaddikim is too strong for that, you know? We have the great people of the last generation. We're not going to write about them or tell stories about their chesronos. We don't even consider ourselves worthy of pointing out their... Were they perfect, by the way? No. No, ain't tzaddik asher yaseh tov v'lo yechta. Nobody's perfect. Even Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't perfect. Even Moshe Rabbeinu was criticized for things. But is it our job to turn to our Rabbeim and focus on and to talk about where they were not perfect? No. The Gemara says, "Im daima lecha rabcha lemalach Hashem tzavakos tavakesh Torah mipiv." If your Rebbe is similar to a malach, then you should learn Torah from him. What, your Rebbe is similar to a Malach? Are you kidding me? No, it means that in your mind, when I think about my Rebbe, I don't think about his chesronos. When I think about my Rebbe, he's a Malach. Does that mean I think he's really a Malach? That his wife or his Rebbe or his Chavrusa never had a ha'ara about him? Or a comment or a critique? Of course not. But the way we get Torah is from a certain relationship of, that's higher than me. That's how I get Torah from my Rebbe. But we have to be healthy people. And being healthy people means that we understand that nobody's perfect, and we expect that it's reasonable that we won't be perfect, and that we could challenge ourselves to grow without beating ourselves up in a way that's unhealthy. And today, as much as we talk about this, and we've been talking about this for years, today we live in a world that's a very, very difficult world of people criticizing themselves and bashing themselves and being hard on themselves. And there's certainly a balance, because if we're too easy on ourselves, that doesn't work either. We have to be mechayev ourselves. We have to tell ourselves sometimes to grow up and step up and to do the job. That's on one side, but we also have to be aware and understanding of our limitations and our place in our Avodas Hashem. Life is a journey. I'm here now. I'm not here yet. And I have to be aware of that. And in terms of my expectations of myself, I can't expect perfection. It's the danger of listening to stories. And I don't know if it's the fault of the stories. I don't know what went wrong, that we created a society that thinks it has to be perfect. I don't know what went wrong. You know, some people blame the fact that we talk about tzaddikim as if they're superhuman. Have you ever noticed that? We talk about them as if they're super. I don't know that that's the part of tzaddikim that's special. You know, there's a famous letter that many of you may have learned when you were in yeshiva. That famous letter, I mentioned it in the Mitzvah Hashkula Shir. One of the guys actually had a copy of the letter on him. But there's a letter that Rav Hutner wrote to a bacher that was struggling. And he wrote to him that it's normal that life is a series of ups and downs. Maybe I should say downs and ups. And he writes to him the pasuk in Tehillim, speaking of David HaMelech. He writes, Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'Kam, which has been made into several popular songs, which may or may not have been a smart idea, but that's not for now. But 7 times the Tzadik falls and gets up. And the Rav Hutner writes, it's not just 7 times, it's 70 times or 700 times. 7 is just a number of riboy, but we fall. That's what happens in life. And Rav Hutner describes him that there's a mahalach in Avodah called losing the battle but winning the war. Sometimes we lose a battle, but that doesn't mean we lost the war. We keep at it until we start winning battles. When you win enough battles, you win the war. Even if you lose one now and then. Right? When you read about the Civil War, about any long war, so there were lost battles on both sides. It's just the one that got the momentum in winning battles is the one that ultimately won. And then he writes something that's maybe a little controversial. He writes, the Chafetz Chaim was famous for being careful about which mitzvah. What? Lashon Hara. The Chafetz Chaim, the Sefer Chafetz Chaim, is not speaking Lashon Hara. He said, you think the Chafetz Chaim never had a taiva to speak Lashon Hara? Do we have any idea of how many ups and downs the Chafetz Chaim had? For all we know, he wrote the Sefer because it's something that he had to work on. Maybe the Chafetz Chaim had a lot of struggles with Lashon Hara until he reached the point of such unbelievable growth and unbelievable Kiddush Hashem that he changed the world in the process. Now, there are people that read that letter and they're like, Chas v'shalom! How could you say something like that about the Chafetz Chaim? He struggled with Lashon Hara? My reaction to that is, so you're saying the Chafetz Chaim was a malach? That's not impressive to me. Is it impressive to you that a malach did everything right? Malachim do everything right. I'm not impressed with that. I'm impressed when a human being reaches a high madrega. I'm impressed when someone struggles and overcomes and grows and becomes something despite the fact that he had struggles in the beginning of his journey. That's what's impressive. people think that when someone says maybe the Chavetz Chaim struggled, we don't know if he did or if he didn't. But people, if you suggest that the Chavetz Chaim struggled with Lashon Hara, that you're putting down the Chavetz Chaim. Are you putting down the Chavetz Chaim? If anything, you're placing him on a pedestal. He's someone that struggled with that, and still he became the Chavetz Chaim. Could you imagine? Is there anything more amazing than that? And then if we reflect that way on our own lives, it gives us chizuk. There are areas that we struggle with, and we can work on ourselves, and we can grow, and we can become better, and maybe even change the world in the process. So that's the charge. So the Mesillas Yesharim tells us to tell stories of tzaddikim. We should tell stories of tzaddikim, but it's not Marvel comics. They're not superheroes. They're human beings that struggled, that had a hard time, that had to work on things, that had disappointments, that had difficulties. And their greatness is that they found the path forward despite that. That's their greatness. And they became the people that they are. That's what it means when we tell stories of Hasidim.